Everyone, this is our video on the legislative branch, and this is a little different, so let's try this together, and hopefully it goes well. Let's get started. We have the legislative branch, and we know that the legislative branch makes laws. There's a nice little picture. Okay, so Congress. We know that we have a bicameral government, that Congress has two different houses. One's called the Senate, and the other one's the House of Representatives. And you can see that on this picture here. Okay, we know that the Senate has 100 members, that it's two representatives per state. And of course, the Senate is a 6-year term. The House of Representatives has a total of 435 members, and of course, the number of House of Representatives is based on the population of the state. And they only have 2 terms. Now, what you need to know about this is the House of Representatives, both of these are prestigious, but the House of Representatives, it's kind of a way to get your foot in the door. The idea is this Senate, like this is where you want to be. This is the cool place. This is a little more prestigious, a little more. You get a 6-year term, not just a 2-year term. There's fewer people, so it's just more prestigious in that sense. So with that, okay, so that these are just pictures inside the Senate as opposed to the House of Representatives. Power from the people. Okay, so what does that mean, power from the people? Power from the people is where we have, as the people, have the power. Now, how do we have the power if we're not sitting there making laws or making everyday decisions? Well, we have the power by representation. We vote for those that are in office that represent us. Those are the people that are making those decisions daily. So therefore, we can not vote for them and by essence firing them. Therefore, we, the people, have the power in that sense. Okay, we have checks and balances. So what is the checks and balances? Now, this is huge. It's a huge concept in civics and government because it is just that important. Checks and balances is that no one person or group of people can do too much damage because they're all working together. No one can really make a decision or too many decisions or have too much power without the consent of another person or another group of people. It's just how we keep everything balanced and in check. An example would be if a bill gets passed in the House and gets passed in the Senate, it can't be a law until the president signs off on it. But then the president can veto that law, meaning he can send it back and go, nope, rejected. And in that sense, it just adds some balance and some checks there. Also, Congress is divided into 2 chambers that share power and provide a system of checks and balances against the abuses of power. And that helps when you have both the House and the Senate, 2 bodies. One's going to get shut down. If there's a law that's not just, it's going to get shut down before in the second in the opposite house. Just adds a little bit of check and balance there. So we know that Congress, the House of Representatives, is a 2-year term, and there's 435 seats. This is maxed out. This will never get more than 435 seats. We can't control more than 435 people. It's just never going to get more than that. But then the Senate here, that's every 6 years. And we don't want our entire Senate leaving the Senate for re-election. So what we do to kind of keep a little bit more consistency there, the Senate actually comes out, and a third of them will campaign in 2014, another third will campaign in 2016, and another in 2018. And so only a third of the Senate is up for re-election at a time. It just adds a little bit of stability there. Important to remember. Okay, there we go. All right, the House of Representatives. Now we're just talking about the House of Representatives, that one body There we go. Total 435 members based on population. 2-year terms, important to remember. They're also known as congressmen. Okay, so there's 3 requirements in the House of Representatives. Must be at least, a person to be a representative has to be, or a congressman, has to be at least 25 years old, be a U.S. citizen for 7 years, and be a resident of the state they represent. It's important to know that you can be a naturalized citizen as long as you've been a citizen for 7 years. So immigrants, in essence, can become congressmen. All right, this is our congressman, Bill Posey. This is our district right here. This is how we vote, and this is how representatives in Congress or our congressmen are elected. And that's how we are, our state is divided into districts. You see these funky lines. They're not like even straight lines. So, I mean, here's our district right here, and here are some redistricting plans. And this is where we get into gerrymandering. When we redraw district lines, people can manipulate. Bill Posey may get, the majority here if the district lines look like this. But if you start messing with these district lines, then he might not get elected. And that goes all over the nation. There's just ways to manipulate this and to move these lines to where the majority of the people will favor one candidate over the other. Okay, so we know that there's 2 political parties. One is the Democrats, they're the donkeys, and then we have the majority party, which is the elephants. That's the Republicans. And right now the Republicans have are the majority party in the House and the Senate. The majority party is just like it says, major. So you're going to look at this and go, okay, the majority, who has the majority of the seats? Which party has the majority of people in it? And then and then it could be different for the House and Senate. You could have, Democrats that have the majority in the Senate, but then have Republicans that have the majority in the House of Representatives. That's a possibility too. Okay, the Speaker of the House. Who is in charge of the House of Representatives? It is this man right here, Paul Ryan. He is a Republican. And right now, because the Republicans are in the majority party in the House of Representatives and the Senate, he was nominated by the House of Representatives to be the Speaker of the House. He actually is, this is second in line for presidential succession, but that's kind of tricky because really what it is if the president dies and the vice president dies, he becomes president. So he's more like third in line. Actually, I don't know. It says second in line because I guess it's vice president and then Speaker of the House, but just keep that in mind. All right, so how, that we have the number of representatives based on the population of our state. And so here are the number of representatives. And what's cool is how do we know how many representatives we get from each state if people are constantly moving in and out of state, if it's based on population? Well, we know what number of representatives we're going to have from each state based on the population on this census. This census is done, and it's just basically a little letter that comes to everyone's house, and you just sign it and say this many people live in my house. And sometimes people knock on your door and just ask you, just sign off on this. We're the census, and we're just taking a census. So you just turn in your numbers. And what's cool is here, now this is back in 2010, these little yellow or gold little states here, these are people that lost representatives because more people left that state than moved to that state. And so they lost representatives. But the dark blue, they actually gained representatives because more people moved to their states. So that's kind of cool. But remember, we'll never go over 435 members in the House of Representatives because we've just kind of capped out. 435 people are hard to manage. Okay, do you remember gerrymandering? Now remember, that's what I talked to you about, manipulating those district lines. So here you go, you have party A, and the purple's party B. And you can see here how, and looks like District 1, it's pretty 50-50. District 2, it looks like pretty 50-50. District 3, 50-50. District 4, 50-50. So it's like half and half. So this is pretty fair. But then right here, I can manipulate these lines, and now all of a sudden, District 1 is definitely a party. And District 2, again, a party. District 3, a party. And District 4 would be B party. So you see here in this model, we would actually have 3 representatives from, 3 representatives from party A, and then only 1 district, 1 representative from party B. Not as fair. So we can manipulate these boundary lines to select certain candidates from certain parties. It's called gerrymandering. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Senate. So the Senate has 100 members, 2 per state, and it's a 6-year term. Remember, this is a little more prestigious. So who is in charge of the Senate? Who's in charge? There's 2 senators. Oh, here are the requirements. We'll get into that in the next slide. There's 2 senators from each state. Here are the requirements. To be a senator, you must be at least 30 years of age. You must be a citizen for 9 years. And you must be a resident of the state you represent. Now, this is different than the requirements to be a congressman in the House of Representatives. In the House of Representatives, you only have to be 25. In the House of Representatives, you only have to be a citizen for 7 years. But in both, you have to be a resident of the state you represent. So the Senate, a little more prestigious. You have to be a little older, be a citizen a little longer. You serve 6 years. And there you go. All right. So who are our senators? Marco Rubio, Republican, and Bill Nelson, who is a Democrat. Again, same thing. They are in the Senate. There's minority parties and majority parties. Okay, who is head of the Senate? We know that the Speaker of the House is head of the House of Representatives, but who is head of the Senate? The Vice President. He's first in line for the presidential succession. If the president dies, he's the first one to be up for president. Mike Pence, who is also a Republican. Now, if he, actually being ahead of the Senate, if the Senate gets votes and there's a tie, 50-50 tie, because there's 100 senators, he gets to break that tie with his vote. Okay, so this is interesting. The vice president is a pretty busy guy. So if he's head of the Senate, what if he's busy? What if he's away at with the president, or he's not there present in the Senate? Who's in charge then? I have this president pro tempore, and this is a position, and look at this, it says right there, temporary. You can almost see it. The word's almost just a little misspelled in it. So when you say temporary, you can see that means temporary. So he's like the temporary, a temporary vice president. He's like a substitute school teacher. He's only there for a short time, only when in the vice president's absent. And then he's in charge. He's always from the majority party. And there you have it. And he's actually third in line for the presidential succession. So it goes vice president, Speaker of the House, and then the president pro tempore. Okay, so there's certain powers or things that Congress is allowed to do or not allowed to do. And there's certain powers, so enumerated powers are express powers. These are powers or like okays, like you are allowed to do this, 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 and this, that are specifically mentioned in Article 1 of the Constitution. They are numbered. This is how you're going to remember this, numbered. You can see the word almost numbered in there. And it's in the Constitution, numbered, actually task by task in the Constitution. And just some examples is the power to coin money, to print money, and the right to or the power to declare war, and that sort of thing too. The power to make and create laws. That's what those are just a couple examples. Powers of Congress, the enumerated or expressed powers. Now, because we're people and we like to stretch things, there are things that Congress does that is not specifically mentioned in the Constitution that they can do, but it's not really an issue. And these are more implied powers. When I imply something, remember, I don't come out and say it necessarily, but I just kind of hint at it. Implied powers are not written. But this is also known as the elastic clause. Remember, your gym shorts are made of elastics. They're stretchy. You're stretching your powers a little bit. It doesn't specifically say in the Constitution you can do that, but you're going to do it because, it kind of goes. And so it's just stretching the powers. It's also called the necessary and proper clause. And it just keeps the Constitution flexible for our ever-changing society. An example would be an enumerated or expressed power of Congress is the power to coin money and to anything to do really with money. Kind of comes back to the legislative branch. So taking it a step further is when we created a federal bank. Now, creating a federal bank was not specifically mentioned in the Constitution as an enumerated power. But since they're already coining money, why can't they start a federal bank? So starting a federal bank and that's an implied power. That's something they did even though they weren't specifically said that they could in the Constitution. Now we know when we talk about implied powers, where it's the same thing as the elastic clause, same thing as the necessary and proper cause. Necessary and proper, that's just a fancy way to say, yeah, it's necessary. Okay. See, little stretchy man there. Okay. So here we go. Here are the enumerated. These are specific things in the Constitution that Congress is specifically mentioned and listed that they can do. The Congress makes laws. They collect taxes. They print money. There you go. They're all about the money. Declare war. Regulate interstate trade commerce. This is buying and selling goods and services. This is just trade. Spending government money. There you go, the money thing again. Create, maintain, and oversee armed forces. And then they approve foreign treaties. Now, all these are listed and numbered and in the Constitution. Remember that, those enumerated or expressed powers. Okay, to impeach. To impeach is to charge officials with misconduct while in office. Now, this is not, they're not going to jail, they're not going to prison, they're not being sentenced. They're just being charged and removed from office. The House of Representatives has the power to impeach. The Senate would be the ones to actually hold the impeachment trial. President Bill Clinton was impeached in the House of Representatives, but he never went to trial in the Senate. 2 presidents have been impeached. Okay, if a president gets out of hand, he can be impeached. This is rule of law. The rule of law is what our entire nation is based on. Do you remember the King of England with the colonists and how he would make unfair rules and unjust rules that would infringe or challenge the rights of the people? The colonists, to protect or safeguard our country from that, a leader that's taking advantage of us, we created this term called rule of law. And rule of law is law. All laws are for everyone, from the top, from the president, all the way down to the homeless person. The rule of law is it's law, it's law, it's law. A law is a law is a law, and it doesn't matter who you are, you have to obey the law. And all rules apply to all people. And so 2 presidents have been impeached. The president is not above the law. And that's an important thing to remember. Andrew Johnson, we talked about Bill Clinton, and then Richard Nixon. I am offering extra credit for anyone who wants to do a little bit of research on this and about any of these 3 presidents and kind of that whole process. I want to know what they did. I want to know why they were impeached, and just do a little bit of research about that and present it. And I'll give you a little bit of extra credit for it. Okay, committees. So a committee is a group of congressmen or senators designed to research the bill, focusing on certain topics. There's 3 types of committees. Okay, there's a standing committee, which is permanent. You can just think of this, if you're standing up, you're grounded. It's more permanent, like standing, like really put your foot in the ground. Permanent. Select is just for a specific job. And so it's temporary. It's specifically a group selected just for a specific task. A joint committee is from both the House and the Senate. It's kind of meeting in the middle between the two. Okay. Committees are not complicated. Don't get overworked about this. You have the House and you have the Senate. They're huge. We have 435 House of Representatives. So that's a lot of people. So when there is a law, which is actually just a bill, it's just written down, it starts at the committee. And the committee is just a small group of people that specialize usually in one area, like education, or like budget and finance. They major, or they just very specific in what their knowledge is a certain kind of law, and bills get assigned according to what committee they kind of fall under. And then the committee is just a small group of people that get together and look over the bills. And the really, really bad ones, they throw in the garbage. And the good ones, they're like, this might actually could be a law. And some of them they change. Some of them they give like, well, I would change this, this, and this, and they hand it back. It's just kind of a filter of the laws. So a bill starts at the committee level. And then we have the standing committees, of course, that we talked about are more permanent. The Senate has 17 standing committees. The House has 19 standing committees. These are more permanent committees. These are groups of people that meet regularly, and they're very specific bills that they look at and things. Select committees, like I said, was a specific job. And then a joint committee is, they kind of bridge the gap between the House and the Senate. Okay, this is interesting. So standing committees, here's some examples. These now standing committees are more permanent committees. So we have agriculture, budget, armed services, financial services, government reform, resources. I mean, here we go, veteran affairs. So here's just a list of those more permanent. So if a bill comes in, they'll be assigned to one of these committees based on which one it most connects with. So if you have a bill about veteran benefits, like increasing veteran benefits, it would probably be assigned to this committee right here, Veterans Affairs Committee, because that would make sense. Now remember, a bill can start in the House of Representatives or a bill can start in the Senate. It doesn't matter. So the Senate, same thing. They're making laws, and here's some of their standing committees. So again, they have a Veterans Affairs. So if they started a law about increasing veteran affairs, it would probably be assigned to this committee. Forgot this right here. Select and special committees. So these are select committees, and these are joint committees. So intelligence, aging, ethics, intelligence. All right. So this is interesting. This is the spending in 2015 of our government. You can see most of our money in the government goes to the military. Isn't that crazy? And then the government, just keeping the government open. Education, huge part of our government. Medicare and health. I mean, this goes to the elderly, their medical expenses, and then veteran benefits. Of course, a veteran is our retired military, or those that have fought in war, housing and community, international affairs, energy and environment, a little bit there, social security and unemployment. No, this is science. So security and unemployment. Unemployment is when you lose your job. You can go to the government and ask for assistance, and they'll give you some monetary assistance, transportation, and then food and agriculture. So pretty interesting to look at. All right, other superpowers of Congress. This is some other stuff, that the cool things they get to do. Eminent domain is something I want to talk about because it's one of our vocabulary words. See, this eminent domain. Domain is where you live. And so here is the hand of the government. See the stripes and the stars. And he's coming after this poor guy's house. And the guy's like, no, don't take my house. This is eminent domain. They can't do that. The government cannot come in and take your house because they like your property. That they have to pay you for it. And they have to pay a reasonable amount. So it's eminent domain. A naturalization, they're in charge. Okay, Congress is in charge of the whole naturalization process and immigration system. So that's kind of cool. And then copyrights. Of course, we talked a little bit about this in another chapter, but copyrights, you want at the federal level, at the top, so that you don't want that to be at the states, because if you copyright something in Florida, somebody else could just run to California and copyright the same lingo. If you have this amazing idea for, I don't know, a toaster that you can use in the shower, you don't want anyone else to, run with your idea and make money. So you want to copyright your little toaster that you can actually use in the shower. And then, you don't want somebody, if you go to patent or copyright it in Florida, you don't want someone to run to California and try to copyright your toaster that you can use in the shower. So here, Congress keeps track of all the copyrights. So no one in the United States is taking someone's idea. You can copyright that and it becomes your idea. It's your possession. It's basically like, you would buy a house or buy a car. That's your property, your idea. Okay. Non-legislative powers. Okay, Congress it can suggest amendments to the Constitution, approve or reject the president's nominees for various offices. When the president becomes in office, he has a whole bunch of people that he hires, and Supreme Court justice, federal judges, ambassadors, and all his appointments, all the people he hires has to be approved or rejected by the legislative branch. Okay, now making laws. A bill can be introduced to Congress by a member of the Senate or a member of the House of Representatives. So both houses are creating these bills. They're creating these ideas of and they're writing them down. They're not laws yet, they're bills. And it starts in the committee. Both the House and the Senate have committees, and those bills get taken to the committee level, and the committees look over them. Most of them, they get rejected right then, or they change them a little bit, tweak them a little bit, or they just love it and they're like, okay, sign on it. And then from there, both chambers of Congress must approve or pass the bill before it goes to the president for his approval or veto. So from those committees, let's say you're from the House of Representatives and you have the committee, that small group approved your bill. So now it goes to the entire House of Representatives, and then they present your bill and they vote on it. If it gets the majority, then it gets sent to the Senate all over again. So it starts at the committee level. That small group, they vote on it. If the bill passes, then the entire Senate votes on it. And then if it wins again and it gets a majority, then it makes its way to the president's desk. At that point, the president can veto it, sign it, or pocket it. A pocket is kind of a funny term. The president can pocket it, and that means he just kind of puts it in his pocket. It sits on his desk. He never does anything with it. But ideally, the president would veto it or sign it into law. And that concludes our presentation, our video today. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure and answer the questions or do the activity on your Google Doc. Hopefully you've been following along and paying attention. Peace out.